Welcome back, and now we're moving on to the conversation around Iran and Israel war. We're going to be looking at US involvement and the implications for global peace. And right here in the studio with us, we have Martin Ani. He's an international affairs analyst. Good morning, and how are you doing?
Good morning, Uche. I'm good. Thank you for
Yes,
having me.
lovely
Thank
to
you,
have you.
Signature TV.
All
It's
right.
a pleasure to be here once again.
Okay. Now, on Saturday, the US launched direct strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
Okay.
Now, first of all, what do you make of, this developing incident? What do you make of it?
Okay, well, it's interesting. Development is interesting and is nothing new in the world. It's about world politics, it's about power politics. So I want to look at it from the realist point of view, which is a theory, an offshoot of power politics. So I want to see it from the point of view that nations are always, seeking out for whatever they consider their interest in the international system. It's not about what you like, but it's about what they like. It's about what is their interest. So their interest is overriding as far as any relationship is concerned. So Israel and United States have their foreign policy, and Dutch, a political scientist, Dutch in 1968, noted that preservation of countries' sovereignty and promotion of their economic interests is the goal of every nation. So in this instance, U.S. had to get involved because U.S. considered that what is happening in the Middle East is it has interest in the Middle East, and that if it doesn't take this action, maybe consider that U.S. security is at stake. So that was why U.S. got involved, and it took everyone by surprise because the POTUS, the President of the United States of America, the powerful Donald Trump, had told Iran to get involved into diplomacy and ensure that he wraps that up in 2 weeks. But 3 days into the 2 weeks, he took everyone by surprise, and then struck the Phantom and the other 2 nuclear sites in Iran. So what I want to say is that is in the interest of America to strike the nuclear power plants, and I think they've done that.
Okay.
And they've asked that Iran should take advantage of this to maintain peace or receive the worst response from America in event they retaliate.
Okay, but do you think that this direct engagement by the U.S., do you see this as maybe a sign that this war is becoming more broader, or maybe could even lead to like a global conflict?
Well, in the international order, there is always a balance of power. So we have 5 members of the UN Security Council that tops the list of countries with nuclear power. Starting with the USA, over 500 warheads. Then former Soviet Union, Russia with over 500 as well. And then you look at France, Great Britain, and then China. So what am I trying to say? It's about balance of power. Iran wants to maintain balance of power in the Middle East with Israel. Israel has nuclear warheads. It has nuclear power. Not just for medical purposes or science or agricultural purposes, no, but for war. So they have nuclear wars of over about 100 nuclear warheads. That's what will send the nuclear weapon to any designation and do the destruction, mass destruction. So they have that, and then Iran feels that there is need for them to come up. When you're fighting with me, and then, for instance, I am weighing 100 kg, and we are put on a balance, and you are weighing 50 kg. There is an inequality. There is no balance. The balance will be tilting towards me. I will be dragging you. So Iran feels within the Middle East, they were friends with Israel, but somehow, when the Ayatollahs came to power, the Khamenei, the current man at the helm of affairs, they came to power, the family came to power, and then they dislodged the government that maintained good relationship with Israel. So from that time, the Israel and Iran has been fighting what they call Prozy war by the other side. You don't come out openly to face me, but I will send my friend who is your neighbor, who is your enemy, to fight you. You know, they had the Hutus in Yemen throwing bombs around, disrupting the flow of marine transport around the Red Sea, which is a major Mediterranean, which is a major means of transportation. Then they had the Hezbollahs in Lebanon, also, doing some harm to Israel. And then they had Gaza, the government in Gaza also being sponsored by. So Iran has been doing the proxy war, fighting Israel by the corner. So somehow, what am I trying to say? Iran actually, it was in their own national interest for them to develop a nuclear weapon. Though International Agency, Atomic Agency Association hasn't actually told us that they were developing nuclear weapons, because Iran said, we are doing something around agriculture, science, to develop our medicine and all that. We are not actually developing, according to the visit by IEA recently. But Trump said he has a better intelligence that Iran was doing something sinister, and we have a non-nuclear proliferation treaty, NPT, that prohibits nations from developing nuclear weapons from 1970. So they were in violation of that, but they pretended they wanted to do something for other academic activities and purposes and medicine and all that. But deep down there, Trump said, no, you were doing this. And Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of UK Prime Minister, stated the other day, and I quote, we cannot allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons, end of quote. So simply put, it's about power play. If the balance of power is not in your favor, there's nothing you can do in the international system. Whether you like it or not, there are no gentlemen in the international order. People in the international order, statesmen who are leaders, country leaders, take decision on what they consider is in the interest of their country, and not what you consider is morally right. Whether there are humanitarian catastrophe, whether there are killings or destruction, it doesn't make any sense to them, as long as their interest is protected and as long as their national interest is protected, and then they achieve that. That's why Trump said, we've bombed the 3 locations and we've achieved our goal. So what am I trying to say? Iran, in their own thinking, wanted to develop a nuclear weapon. And they have the right to do that. But then, in international politics, power is might, and might is right.
Okay,
so it's not about what is right, it's who has influence.
All right, but seeing how this conflict is becoming more direct, and the involvement of the U.S. in it, okay, what do you think should be the next reaction?
Fine, that was your question, even though I went on a long, narrative. Then the point is this: who is going to come in? Tell me who is going to come in. Russia is busy; their hands are busy fighting Ukraine. 3 years on, they thought they were offshored and push aside Ukraine, but then NATO, led by U.S., allied under Putin, they rally around president of Ukraine. And then Ukraine have been able to build their defense system to the point that they even started sending long-range missiles into the enemy camp. And then that rattled and messed up Vladimir Putin. So what am I trying to say? Who is going to come in? Iran, the allies, are the Russians, and then China. So who is going to come in? I tell you, no one is going to come in. People will just make noise, and a few days from today or weeks from today, nothing will happen. After all, Iran had threatened Israel that after their bombing that they will retaliate heavily, and that the world will hear. The world hasn't heard anything. 1 week on. So what am I trying to say? Nations, they are allies. So whatever you are doing with me, my allies are watching. If your friend get involved, my allies get involved. So U.S. has the upper hand. So if Iran makes the mistake of their life to target U.S. interests within the Middle East, I tell you there will be more devastating consequences. You saw the B-2 bomber do the dirty job. First time it's being used. It's a bomb, is a bunker breaking bomb with so much capacity. You know, so that was the first time they used it in those 3 locations. And then they've achieved, so I don't see it's only maybe Russia will make some noise, China will try to say something, but at the end of the day, is in the interest of Iran to stop the nuclear plant and gaining nuclear capability is in their interest to stop that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
because we know what happened in Iraq in the past.
Yes, yes, but looking at still on the U.S.
America,
involvement,
yeah.
Do you think that America is actually being sincerely truthful, you know, concerning their involvement and going on to, you know, direct airstrikes at Iran's, whatever reason they had for doing that? Do you think there is a sincerity or truthfulness, you know, behind that action? Well,
there is no truth in international order. There is no truth in international system. Truth is what you make of it. What you say is truth is truth. So the President of America says what international agency, atomic agency is saying that there is no nuclear enrichment for weapons in Iran, that what they are saying is not correct. That it has a better intelligence. So what am I trying to say? There's international law. But where is the law? Severally, nations have gone to UN and all that, both as Security Council, gone to International Criminal Court, gone to this and that to ask Israel to stop the war in Gaza. But what has happened? The war has intensified till date. So what are we trying to say? In the international system, might is right, and power is might. Might is right. So U.S. hold the us as far as dictating world peace and world order is concerned. So they've put aside international law. International law has become a rhetoric, you know, possibly applied to developing nations like Nigeria and the rest of us in Africa. Those are the countries that international law applies to. But as far as the world powers are concerned, they determine what is right and what is not right, and what is morality and what is not moral. So as far as I'm concerned, U.S. have decided that this is right, and this is the right time to do that, even going against the 2 weeks diplomacy window they gave to Iran to take action. They decide it's a game, is under games theory, it comes under games theory. These are games that nations play to achieve whatever they want. It's like playing card. Possibly they may have deceived Iran, so Iran will stay on the 2 weeks and then they achieve their plan to avoid any attempt to hinder such strike. And they've said it's successful. And they love it.
All right. And now, Iran has voted to close the Strait of Hormuz.
Okay.
I mean, it made the headlines as well on the newspapers this morning.
Okay.
Now, what global economic and, you know, security consequences would follow if they go through with that?
With closing the
Strait of
nuclear
Hormuz.
plant.
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the plants. Is that not?
Yes.
Yeah. So what they are already playing ball. They are already aligning. They are already taking what is in their national interest. They've considered that in their national interest, because if they go against that, there could be other cataclysmic consequences. I think that's what they're avoiding. So you know there is a divide between the people of Iran and the regime of IRGC, International Revolutionary Guard, headed by Ayatollah Khamenei. So it looks like the people don't want them, but they are there. And you know how this system is, they are closed. It's a closed system. It's not a liberal democracy where people come out openly. If you come and say one thing today in Iran, you disappear because the regime is almost a dictatorship.
All right. And you also think that if Iran goes further to retaliate, it will provoke groups like Hezbollah and, you know, Houthis to join the war more directly? Yeah,
like we pointed out earlier, Hezbollah has been decimated, Houthis in Yemen has been decimated, and then their suppliers and their backers, which is Iran. IRG, Iran Revolutionary Guard, is under attack. You had the other day, many of the commanders, many of the scientists destroyed in warfare swoop attack from Israel. So who is going to provide the financing? Who is going to supply the missiles that they will throw around? So it's like when a father is in trouble and then the child is training, only needs to go hide somewhere because the father is in trouble, and see if the father comes out strong, then they can begin to reorganize and get back to the war front. So at the moment, the Middle East is in disarray. We don't know what will happen next. And then it's already having wider implications across the globe. This morning I listened to your newspaper review. Oil is already reaching $80 per barrel. And the impact is already being felt in Nigeria.
Yes, because I was actually coming to that, the impact of this war in countries like Nigeria and, other African countries. How
the impact is already here with us. You are a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. But the moment I leave this studio, I'll be going to pick fuel to refuel my car. Before now, I bought a little lower than 900 naira per liter. But today, I'll be buying about 930. And if this war lingers, we'll be hitting 1,000 in no distant time. And then the oil supply in the world is already being disrupted. That is the implication, wider implications for all of us. The war, Iran is a major supplier, is a major producing nation of the world, state of the world. So Pakistan is already growing badly under the impact of this war. And then there is already dislocation of persons from their areas of residence. There's already refugees, people are living. Pakistan is being flooded, the neighboring states are being flooded. So that's why I said the Prozy fighters are already in disarray. So what can Hezbollah do? What can the Hutus do? So at the moment, everyone will be quiet while waiting for the father to see how the father recovers, which is Iran. And the best thing for Iran to do is to wind down, to stop this nuclear capability acquisition, and see how to come to the table of the international diplomacy and resolve some of these issues. But as per wider conflagration, I tell you, Russia cannot get in, not even China. China is going to countries seeking new alliances all over Africa, building our CCC, building our railways, building our roads, trying to get new friends, from Africa. So they are more interested in economic empowerment and the economic programs instead of getting into war. They have a lot of issues already in the Asia area, so they only want to get involved. Then Russia haven't finished dealing with Ukraine, their former USSR member, and then so they can't get involved. So I can tell you, it's only other economic implications that will happen. I don't see the third war coming, because people are saying, oh, it's possible that what is happening in the Middle East, there is going to be the Third World War.
Yes.
The Third World War was a different thing. And then when we talk about nuclear armament, it was a time in 1945. Nations were getting nuclear powers, in order to withstand, and protect their sovereignty. So 1945, when Japan tried U.S. harbor with an attack, then U.S. felt that they can't take such aggression. And then they used the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. And we saw the human destruction and the infrastructural destruction. Even to date, the impact of radiation is still affecting the people of that area. So that's why we say non-nuclear proliferation treaty says, the principle said, let's stay with 1970. Let's stay with only the people that have this, acquire this for now. Let's see how to disarm them. It is deploying technology in nuclear weapon. Nuclear plant. You deploy it, and then you dismantle it as well. So let's see those who want to dismantle. Germany dismantled in 2003. So what are we trying to say? And then ensure that people don't use this negatively to fight war. Because if people throw, if that's why it's difficult for US and Russia to get into a war, they will always find a way, because you have what I have, 500 warheads plus, 500 warheads plus, so why would we get in? They will always find a way to settle, because of the wider human catastrophe that use of nuclear warheads in fighting will result to. That's why they are behaving like gentlemen, and they try to maintain the order.
Okay, but is there any hope for, third-party mediation between Iran and Israel?
Sure. There is hope. Even before the B-2 bombers were deployed on Iran nuclear facilities, Russia had volunteered to mediate, because this is one of their allies, Iran, in trouble. And that trouble, the skirmishes, is coming from one of their respected foe or friend, US, and then with their ally, Iran, Israel. So they had actually indicated interest to mediate. And China also said, let this Middle East crisis not fledge, not be allowed to escalate. They were talking about de-escalation. So, but then people are questioning the involvement of Vladimir Putin in resolving the crisis. When he had crisis in his neighboring country, and he's not been able to obey ordinary ceasefire and all that. So the point here is this: yeah, your ally is in trouble. Certainly, you raise your hand to do something. So let's see. The important thing is William Zatman. William Zatman, in his theory, talks about ripeness theory. Ripeness theory is a theory that believes that you and I, if we are involved in crisis, we will come to the table only when we have reached mutually destructive level. So if what I'm doing to you is not hurting you badly, you are not feeling the pains, you won't come to the table. And what if you are doing to me is not hurting? So that's why William Zatman propounded the ripeness theory. So I believe that they are coming to the ripeness theory. What has happened to Iran is now hurting Iran. Israel hasn't been left out. In Israel, you can't say whether they have nuclear weapons, but I can tell you they do, because in Israel, you say nothing, you see nothing. It's a closed state. So what are we trying to say? They've come to a mutually hurting level, MHL. Now Israel has received, their hands have been burnt as well. In as much as people, human destruction has been limited to less than 30 persons and well over 200 in Iran. But then a lot of infrastructures, because the Iron Dome is being overwhelmed with missiles attacks and drones and bombs and all that. So it manages to handle some, throw into the open place, but then there are still destruction. Yeah. So what are we trying to say? They've come to mutually hurting level, and then Iran has achieved their purpose, which is disrupting the nuclear weapon, which US has now gotten involved and destroyed with the B-2 bombers. So what are we trying to say? They've reached a mutually hurting level, so they should come to the negotiation table.
Yes, and you also mentioned, speaking of Russia, and their role in possible mediation for Israel and Iran. Now we also know that Russia is strongly opposing US strikes, the US strikes. So, and they have the Ukraine war still going on. So are we now seeing a situation whereby the Ukraine war will become entangled with the Israel and Iran war?
Yeah, they can't entirely be entangled because they have their parts. This is Israel, this is Russia, Ukraine. They know they are doing their thing there, but they want to mediate somewhere. So what we are only trying to say is, can there be any war that will now begin to affect more than the parties at play at the moment? And I am saying I don't think so. Because why? What Russia is doing in Ukraine, NATO is supporting Ukraine to fight back. And Russia has not been able to finish that war. So it's costing well over $670 billion, for some of these missiles and armament to be deployed, in these wars. So the war is very costly. To build a warhead, I was told, is about 10 to 15 billion US dollars. Just to build one nuclear warhead. Not to talk about countries that have about 500, so you do the multiplication. So it's the only country that have come close to nuclear capability in Africa is South Africa. But then, the Pendelian treaty they entered into last time, they pulled out of it, because one is expensive. The missiles, the bombs, the drones. Look at what is going on in Nigeria. How many drones can we deploy? If we had these capabilities, we could have deployed it to Benue and stop the skirmishes. Those people that come kill and go away, we'll track them and deal with them. But then, so it's quite expensive. Yeah, it's quite expensive.
Just very quickly, I just want to know, what do you think, because obviously this war is already affecting African countries, like we just said earlier, it's affecting our fuel prices and all of that. Yeah. So what do you think African countries can do at this point, seeing the trajectory this war may be leading to?
Yeah, African countries are not aligned in international system. They don't align to neither do they align to Russia, neither do they. So they work with anyone. They apply foreign policy of opportunism. So whichever one that favors us, if China can support us. So what African countries should do is to work with these countries that are having issues and see if they'll come to the table, apply international diplomacy, use their contact, use their influences, and see if they could come to the table. Because if the war goes on, Africans will also suffer the impact, and then the human catastrophe, where no one is talking about that anymore. So the impact on human lives is enormous, and then we don't want that to impact on our economy, so that families will not go home hungry. Already you know how wonderful our government is. So added to this, once the fuel begin to rise, cost of goods, services will begin to rise, because people transport goods and services and all that. So what we are saying is they should take advantage of international diplomacy and remain non-aligned, because they have got no power to make any, in the balance of power, like I stated, they got nothing to offer, except international diplomacy and negotiation, and see how conflict is resolved.
All right, thank you so much, Martin Ani, for spending time with us on this conversation.
Thank you, Uche. Thank you, Signature TV. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, and that is it for our conversation on the Israel and Iran war. We'll go on a very quick break, and when we return, our conversation continues.
Signature TV. News in your pocket.